Hi, good morning, everyone. Today we're here to talk to Taryn Donaldson. I work with her here at IBM. She's a security services manager. And I think her story is so interesting when you think about choosing a path in security. So, hi, Taryn. Welcome this morning.
Hey, good morning.
And thanks for talking. And we're doing this like COVID pandemic interview from home. So, I appreciate you for joining today. So, I already established that we work together. You have a great career in security going on. So what I really wanted to start off by asking was security your first choice? And if not, what did you pursue first, second, third?
So, so I'm 31. Obviously, back then, security wasn't as huge as it is now. So I actually started in teaching. And from teaching, I went to culinary, I went to social services. So back in high school, all the tech they really talked about was we had this one web design class, and we had this one Microsoft Office suite class. So it's not really something that we learned about. So of course, back in the day when they didn't have all these great programs they have now, I kind of followed the path of everything but security. And it wasn't until recently, my cousin's best friend went to a tech school, and he was 18 years old, didn't even finish. He was about 1 year in. He took all his technical courses first, and he was living in the basement, and he came up and he's like, "Oh, I'm buying a Mustang." And we're all looking like, where's this little 18-year-old getting money for a brand new Mustang? And he's like, "Oh, yeah, well, I'm working in security now, and I make, $70,000 a year." And it just blew me back that that was a thing. And at first we're all like, "Oh, physical security." And he's like, "No, it's technical." And I'm like, "Oh, so computers." And he's like, "Yeah." So this little 18-year-old was doing this, and I just thought to myself, I can do this. I'm gonna do this. And then it was like when I learned more about what he was doing, I thought to myself, this actually is interesting. This actually is fun. This actually has so many different paths to take. He went off into more programming. I took my direction more into hacking, so like the pen testing side. But it was not my first choice, but I think it was just lack of not knowing what it was, because when I figured it out, I loved it.
That's so interesting. So he sounded like he was your trigger to move to security. So now that you have an established security career, who has been most influential? And it could be one, two, three people along that career journey.
So I would say I have so many. I always believe in keeping a ton of mentors, because like security changes every day. You're going to need different inputs from different people, or you're going to need to learn different skills, and you never know who you might need to call back again. So no matter where I go, I always try to meet a million people, let everyone know who I am, try to collect as many mentors as I can. Because recently, actually, when I shifted to the position I'm in now, I remembered back, I was onboarding EPs not long ago with someone who's in the exact same role I'm in. And I gave him a call and I'm like, "Hey, I'm about to do what you do, and you are so awesome. Can you please tell me about it? Like, what do I need to study? What do I need to do? What are some strong points?" So, like, security is ever changing. Make sure your mentors are ever changing, and keep whoever you can around your circle, because even if they're not there to teach you a skill, they're great for support. They're great just, in general direction giving. So, keep everyone.
That's really enlightening. I don't think I've ever thought about that continual cycle of creating a mentor as your career change, or keeping a hamster wheel, I guess, of mentors. That's really good. So if I think he was your trigger to move into security, you have these mentors. Um, what education path did you pursue, and which of those paths are most effective? I know for me myself, there are places where I've spent time in education where I thought, oh, that wasn't well spent time, well spent. So I'm curious what education paths you did pursue, and then which you think were most effective for you.
So I am extremely non-traditional. When I first graduated, I went for art. I switched to this one Microsoft class, which was fun, but it's Microsoft Office, so it's not really technical. Then I went to culinary school. And then after that, I went for teaching, and I stopped for a while. And I raised my kids from home. I was in like a very bad relationship. So I left to come to Georgia, and that's where I was raising my kids and getting everything together. But then when I finally came around and had that kind of realization that I want to do security, I started at a technical school close by. Now, again, this is why it's so untraditional. So I started my first year and I was more interested in certifications. I was more interested in finding clubs. I was more interested in going to events, going to conferences, finding mentors, reaching out to people who were in the industry already, self learning, and then tying everything that I previously did, even though it's completely unrelated, to what I'm doing now. So taking that art background and trying to make everything more creative, thinking about what tools were digital or on, technology that I could kind of merge with what I'm doing now. So it's completely non-traditional, like let's graduate and go get a master's.
Right.
And it's also different because a lot of people in our roles don't have any type of degree under a bachelor's degree. But at
Hmm.
the same time, I feel like this is great because this is taking steps in the right direction. Because even if you have your master's, what you learned in security 10 years ago or 8 years ago might not even be relevant now. So to look past that, and I know IBM does it a lot, which is amazing, to look
Yes.
past that and really say, you know, you have the passion, you have these technical skills that you learned on your own. You have this current technical, you know, knowledge that you learned at all these conferences that happened a week ago. It's more important, which I'm not putting down anyone with a master's degree, but I should be just as important because I stayed on this and I know everything that's right now. So where they can help me with the foundation, I can help them with what's forever changing, how it merged, what's happening yesterday.
I love that. So it's a beautiful marriage, right,
Yes, it's all.
between the two. I'm curious when you said that you reached out and you went to events or reached out to groups. Was that scary for you coming from a culinary or a teaching background and you're kind of entering this new world? And if it, what kind of feelings did you go through and how did you overcome those and jump in the deep end? Because it really sounded like you jumped straight into the deep end.
Yes. So, it's funny when I came to IBM, Ginny always had that quote up that if you're comfortable, you're not going to grow.
Hmm.
So
It's my favorite.
I know, I love it. So when I got here and I heard it, it was funny because how I felt was I always did what was comfortable in the beginning of my life and it never worked out. It's like, yeah, women cook, let's do culinary, I like people, let's do social services, let's do this. And it's like I got nowhere just sitting in the back seat in the class. I got nowhere, you know, missing classes if I just had a headache. So I was like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to take this over because if you're comfortable, you're just going to kind of streamline right by slowly and basically go in those circles. So I felt like I need to get noticed. I need to do this and I need to take this seriously. So I kept a 4.0. Not only joined the clubs, but I started to build my own clubs. So I saw Women in Technology wasn't in there. So I was the founding president. I was the person, yeah. I made everything that they use today still. I established all their connections. I still go back and speak for them. So it's totally awesome. We started a mentor program. It's like you can go through life staying comfortable or you can stand out. And the best way to do that is when you're going through it, think, how can this be better? My biggest challenge was finding a mentor. My biggest challenge was finding some way to have a job or, finding relevant stuff outside of these textbooks. And it's like, well, let's start a group for that. Let's start a mentorship program. Let's establish connections so the next generation has it easier than you had it.
That's wild. I love how I mean, I know you, so I know you're a natural leader, but I really love that. I think that's great advice that you kind of find a gap or see a need and then you don't wait on the sidelines to fill it. You can fill it. It's fine. Yeah. So that's really interesting. I want to, it's when, as you're talking, I'm thinking, wow, it's almost like a double life. So how, or a new life that you've created. So how does your life differ from, sidelines, Taryn, versus leading, groups in security, Taryn, and having the security career? Is your life a true 180?
No, so I'm so happy you asked that because it's like one of the biggest important things doing anything. It's like finding the balance to make both work perfect together. So I loved what I was doing with leadership. So it's like I would keep myself going and as a mother, because I have 3 kids, babies to 9. So I would find ways kind of to merge them with that life in a way. So when I do all this stuff, I always invite my kids. They are, since they're 5 years old, building robots, learning how to program them to go certain ways using mathematics. So I keep them involved in my life, but I also try to be very involved in theirs, and teach them those skills that I know they're going to need one day. So when I signed my son up for soccer, it was like he's on a great team, a travel team, but I'm also his coach. So I coach them, I teach them how to, be captains, how to be leaders, and try to just overall try to help my kids and my husband and everybody else learn the skills that I have so one day it just transfers over.
I think that's so important because you're basically saying you can take any skill set and apply it to security and be successful. Very cool.
Yes.
So if you think about it, obviously, I mean, I'm obviously very supportive of your career. I'm a Terran champion. Do
Yeah.
you feel supported as a woman, specifically in your career? Both, this could be inside or outside of work. And if and just your general thoughts about that. If you don't, what could help? Things like that.
So, this was my favorite question. um, so you are amazing as a supporter. I have amazing management right now. You guys are awesome. But and I had previous managers that were awesome. I just basically I was my biggest downfall and it took me a while to learn that. So like as a woman, we hear all these negative things and we automatically assume that's how it is. And sometimes it is that way. I'm not going to deny that. Like sometimes men look at, pregnancies as weakness. Sometimes men look at the fact that, if you have this woman thing going on that's really serious and you need a day to yourself, like that's a weakness. And I actually ended up being my biggest drawback because so when I first started at IBM, I had found out I was pregnant. And I was going through some rough stuff in my pregnancy, so I wasn't sure if it was a good thing or not. As in I wasn't sure if she was gonna make it at first. So when I finally knew, it wasn't until 5 months, and I'm like, "Great, so now I'm 5 months pregnant, how do I tell my manager?" I worked on a global team, it was all men. There was one other woman on my team that worked with us. So, it was scary, and it's like, I kept thinking to myself and my family kept saying it too, like, "Oh, you're gonna get fired, why would you have a baby now?" Even your
Oh, so
family
that was
says
the
it too.
that was the dialogue you were hearing from your family. Interesting.
Yes, family, friends were like, "Oh, why'd you do that?" And I just let it marinate in my brain, and it's like I watched myself create my own downfall. So when I had my baby, I had a doctor sign a note that I only needed 2 weeks off so that I can tell my managers, "Oh," and I had a C-section, so it sucked. I told my managers, "Yeah, I'll be fine to return to work in 2" I said, "2 weeks, I need to go have a surgery and I'll be back." So my surgery was a C-section, having a whole baby. And then I basically never really took any maternity leave or anything because I kept telling myself, because of what my family and friends and everyone else told me, and like, these ideas I had in my head, these men are going to look at me like I'm weak. They're going to replace me. I'm not going to be valuable to them. And I basically created my own downfall because eventually I did tell them when they saw this tiny little baby.
Right? Where'd that come
Yeah.
from?
And it's like it was nothing but, "Oh my goodness, you should have took off more time. If you need time, let us know. If you need to take off." And it's like my biggest fears were gone and I realized it was myself because they were so accepting of the fact that I had a baby and they were so nice about it and they're like, "I had no idea you had this going on and you were doing such a great job." And it's like now they're being so nice about it and complimenting me and it
Yeah.
was just so great. So I feel like we need to not assume the worst at first because a lot of the world is in a great place right now where we're more accepting of, everything, not just having babies, but like, your sexual orientations, or you as a person, if you want to make a complete change. Like the whole world right now, most of them are accepting of this. So do not assume the worst at first because it's not always that way.
That's really interesting that from a perspective where you actually did have a great support system, but you were almost not supporting yourself. I
Exactly.
think that's a strong message, and for us, I think all women who are watching this can say, "Oh, we try to be superwoman, right? We don't want to be less than 100% in any area." So that's really insightful. Thank you. I want to kind of stay on that thread where you said, obviously you were at IBM when you were having your baby. So you obviously chose IBM for your security career. So you obviously think that's a good fit. I'm curious, any comments about that? Or, I don't want to stay on just an IBM thread. Were there any companies that you considered other than IBM? And how did you land here?
So, I loved IBM, honestly. I loved Delta, and I always told myself I will work at IBM or I will work at Delta. But
So
what
you had that goal. You put that
Yes,
on a okay.
I said that. But I sealed the deal because actually Michelle Rivers and a few other people had this meeting, and it's called Cyber Day for Collegiates. And it was for girls in college, which this was when I was in my little tech school that I still love and go back to. But I was in the
Can you
tech.
shout them? Can you shout them out? What tech school was it?
I went to Gwinnett Tech, and
Okay.
with my 4.0, now I'm probably going to start at Georgia Tech soon. As soon as I get this whole life balanced and I'm ready. But yeah, no, they are so great. Gwinnett Tech. I help them fill those in. But yeah, no, I always said I wanted to work at Delta and I wanted to work at IBM. But when I went to this event, right, we did a tour of the SOC. They talked to us about all these open availabilities and options IBM had, and the environment that we're in, and how we're in a world, and this is different from any other company, but when they showed us the SOC, all the seats were together and there's no offices.
Mhm.
Other than people who would go in and come out right away, and then someone else would go in. And I'm like, so there's no offices here. And they're like, yeah, it doesn't matter if you are, you know, Mike Spizak or an EP, like an early professional, like you're sitting right next to each other. And I use him as an example because I was sitting next to him one day. I had no idea who he was. And here I am, this new starter, and
Yeah.
Mike Spizak sitting next to us. And I'm like, that's crazy. And it's great because he's such an you meet so many awesome people, again, make those mentor relationships. And it's like IBM treats us all as equals. So basically, when we went on the SOC tour at the end, after seeing all that, Mr. Dan, who is the head consultant who kind of gives those SOC tours and introductions to all of our clients, I turned to him and I said, I want to work here one day. I'm going to come back and I'm going to work with you.
I love
And
it.
it's, yeah, and it's like two failed interviews. So I applied for a few positions. Um, I didn't get a call back for two. I got the first interview for one. It was a virtual interview and I did not get it. But that last position, I had an interview with an actual person and I did get that role.
Oh,
And
great.
thanks. It was over the course of like 6 months. So 6 months later, I came back down. And of course, on my first day, I went to find Mr. Dan and sat next to him in the SOC, and I was like, "I work here now."
I love it.
And we got such a good laugh out of it, it was awesome.
I love it. I mean, that's such a beautiful story of I want a career in security. I'm going to have a career security and it's going to be for a company that I want to work for. So, and I appreciate your time today. So I want to wrap it up by, if you had to, obviously I want to encourage more women to pursue careers in security. If you were encouraging more women to pursue a career in security, what do you feel would be most helpful? What kind of advice? Just some wrapping thoughts.
So, as a woman who's looking for a career in security, I would say never give up, never let anything get you down. Like I said, I had 4 interviews with IBM before I got on,
Okay.
and that's just one company. Imagine if I went to 100 companies, I would have had 100 failed interviews. So if you know what you want, keep your mind on that goal. Because if I gave up the first time IBM told me no, I would not be here. It took 4 tries of solid, I'm gonna work there. And
And
as
4 actually isn't that, I mean, 4 is really great.
I know, well, because it was only one company. Remember, if it was like 100, I'm sure I would have got 100 denials first. But I wanted to come to IBM. But no, honestly and truthfully, and as companies or as women in general, try to fill those gaps. Like that's my biggest point, and our biggest weakness is even as, these huge, awesome organizations form, are we really linking them to where they need to be linked to? Are we only looking at Georgia Tech? I'm sorry, yeah, as Georgia Tech versus Gwinnett Tech. So I'm wondering, like, can we help spread the word of what is available in technology, reach out
Right,
to a younger generation so they're ready to start this sooner, or look for people who have that passion versus people who have that work experience or that college degree at master level or doctorate, because you can have passion and can't afford school. You
right.
can know exactly what you're doing, and you never had that opportunity to pay to go to a conference. So it's like we should look everywhere. Look in these tech schools, look, host these events where people could sign up for free and play a little game, and you'll see how much skill they really have. And it's just we need to make those connections and links for people.
More available. I agree. I agree. And if you're watching this video, you probably found us through LinkedIn. So you can message us, right? Start making those connections today. Reach out to, I'm volunteering you, Taryn, and volunteering
Yes.
myself. I think start making those connections and putting yourself out there to switch to that security career. So I want to thank you so much today for your time today. Is there anything you want to say before we leave or anything I missed?
No, you covered it
Okay.
all. You're awesome. And
Well,
we have
thank
great managers here at IBM. They're amazing.
yeah, our plug that we got to plug. Okay.
Yes, every team I've been on, they're so awesome. Madi, you're amazing.
We have a great team, great women in security champions. So
Oh,
obviously we'd love to have you at IBM if you're watching this. So feel free to reach out to us. Thank you so much for your time today, Taryn. And I'm
yes.
looking forward to it.
And keep in mind, security is not just what that's another thing. Security is not just what you think it is. It's not just hackers. It's not just data or, you know, um, analysts. It is, you could be in marketing for security. You could be in so many different roles. So take any experience you have, shift it towards security, make that little connection for yourself, and look at what it is.
I think that's great advice. And I think that is part two of Taryn and Madi's conversation. We'll deep dive into a couple day in the life actual roles. So good.
Yeah.
Thanks for pitching our sequel, Taryn.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. Bye.